The air in my small Chicago apartment still smelled faintly of her favorite lavender and old books, even weeks after Aunt May was gone. I was 34, a librarian, and May had been my anchor, my confidant, my last living relative. When she passed, it felt like the quiet, sturdy ground beneath my feet had simply crumbled away. She'd always been there, a steady light, a safe harbor. Her lakeside cottage, a place of sun-drenched summers and whispered secrets, was more than just property. It was a physical manifestation of her love, a sanctuary I'd always assumed would be mine. May had told me countless times about her will, casually, over cups of Earl Grey. The cottage, she'd said, was for me. And a modest inheritance, enough to keep me comfortable, to continue my work without the gnawing worry of bills. She'd even mentioned that Evelyn, her dearest friend for over 40 years, would be the executor. Evelyn, with her crisp suits and sharp mind, had always seemed perfectly suited for such a task. She'd been a rock for May, especially in her final years. And Mr. Finch, Evelyn's recommended lawyer, came highly vouched for, a pillar of the legal community. In my grief-stricken haze, I placed my full, unreserved trust in them, believing they would honor May's memory with the same care she had shown me. My mind was too swamped with the loss, the emptiness, to even consider anything else. I wanted to believe, desperately, that in this chaotic world, some things, like May's love and her wishes, were sacred and inviolable. Evelyn was there almost immediately after the funeral, a comforting presence. She held my hand, her eyes watery, her voice a soft, empathetic murmur. "Oh, Liam, my heart breaks for you," she'd said, squeezing my fingers. "May adored you." She spoke of May's final wishes with such reverence, such conviction, that it only solidified my trust. She took charge of everything, coordinating the service, handling the immediate paperwork, shielding me from the harsher practicalities of death. She seemed so capable, so genuinely concerned for me, that I clung to her stability. I remember her initial efficiency, how quickly she arranged the first meeting with Mr. Finch. He was a man of precise movements and quiet confidence, his office smelling of polished wood and old paper. He spoke in measured tones, outlining the probate process. It all sounded dauntingly complex, but he assured me everything would be handled smoothly. Evelyn sat beside me, occasionally offering a reassuring smile or a gentle pat on my arm. She seemed to understand the legal jargon far better than I did, nodding sagely at Mr. Finch's explanations. There was a moment, early on, when Evelyn suggested we simply let Mr. Finch manage the entire estate sale, including the cottage, because it would be less stress for me, and then I could buy it back from the estate. A fleeting flicker of unease went through me. Why would I buy back something May intended for me? But Evelyn quickly added, "It's just cleaner that way. Darling, less paperwork for you, and Mr. Finch gets the best price." And I, drowned in sorrow, simply nodded, grateful for anyone to take the burden off my shoulders. It was a faint, almost imperceptible red flag, quickly dismissed as my own ignorance of estate law. I didn't question her, couldn't bring myself to. My mind was still reeling, grasping for any shred of normalcy. The thought of challenging Evelyn felt like betraying May, whose judgment I trusted implicitly. Then came the first whispers of complications. A letter arrived from Mr. Finch, an official-looking document, detailing unforeseen administrative challenges. Evelyn called me, her voice tinged with regret. "Oh, Liam, it seems May's finances were a little messier than we thought," she explained, her tone hushed. She was a private woman, bless her heart. "There are some unexpected debts, and the taxes. Darling, the taxes are always a nightmare." She sighed, a breathy sound of resignation. "It's all going to eat into the inheritance, I'm afraid." My stomach clenched. Debts? May had always been so meticulously careful with her money, but Evelyn assured me it was common, especially with older folks. I remember walking through my apartment, feeling the floor shift beneath me. My librarian's mind, accustomed to order and facts, tried to make sense of it, but the words were vague, the numbers unspecific. I asked Evelyn for details, for a breakdown. She promised to get them from Mr. Finch, but the requested documents never fully materialized, replaced instead by more general summaries and a growing list of legal fees. The cottage, too, became a source of growing anxiety. Mr. Finch, in a subsequent meeting, explained that it would need extensive repairs to be market-ready, driving down its perceived value. He suggested an appraisal by a specialized firm, which, unsurprisingly, came back significantly lower than I'd ever imagined. He spoke of the burdens of ownership, the depreciation, the unforeseen structural issues. Evelyn chimed in, leaning forward with a conspiratorial air. "Darling, it's a beautiful old home, but old homes are money pits. May worried about you being saddled with it. Perhaps it's best to just simplify things." I felt a growing sense of unease, a cold not tightening in my chest. Each conversation felt like being slowly squeezed, the vision of May's generous legacy shrinking with every passing week. I started to feel foolish for my concerns, as if I were being greedy. Evelyn's gentle, pitying gaze made me doubt my own feelings. "You're grieving, Liam," she'd say, almost chastising me. "Don't let these practicalities overwhelm you. We're doing what's best, what May would have wanted." Her words, wrapped in empathy, were like a soft blanket that slowly began to suffocate me. The psychological pressure escalated. Every time I tried to ask a pointed question about the estate's finances or the cottage, Evelyn would deflect. "Oh, that's just lawyer talk." She'd wave her hand dismissively. "So much red tape." Or she'd sigh, looking genuinely weary. "Liam, I'm doing my best, you know. It's all so much, and honestly, the details are mind-numbingly boring. You just need to trust us." Mr. Finch, for his part, would simply send more official-looking letters, filled with dense legal terms and references to obscure statutes. He would schedule meetings where he'd speak in a rapid, almost monotone voice, rattling off figures that never quite added up to my original understanding. I felt my grip on reality slipping. Was I misremembering May's words? Was I just too naive, too unworldly, to understand the complexities of wealth? One afternoon, Evelyn called, her voice tight with what sounded like exasperation. "Liam, darling, this is getting ridiculous. Mr. Finch says we absolutely must sell the cottage. There are these outstanding liabilities. Very serious. If we don't sell it quickly, the estate could be in real trouble. And you wouldn't want that, would you? To jeopardize May's entire legacy?" My breath caught in my throat. "Liabilities? What liabilities?" She paused, then adopted a slightly wounded tone. "Honestly, Liam, you're making this so difficult. I'm trying to protect you, protect May's wishes. You need to sign these papers authorizing the sale. The price is, well, it's not what we hoped, but it's the best Mr. Finch could negotiate given the circumstances." My head throbbed. My hands trembled as I held the phone. I felt small, helpless, confused. She made it sound like I was being unreasonable, ungrateful, perhaps even disrespectful to May's memory. The inheritance, once described as modest but comfortable, was now being presented as a mere fraction of what I'd understood. Mr. Finch sent a draft of the final distribution, and the number was shockingly low, a pittance compared to what I'd imagined. The cottage, my sanctuary, was a foregone conclusion. I felt a profound sense of despair, a hollow ache where hope used to be. It was as if a part of May, a tangible piece of her love, was being systematically dismantled before my very eyes. I felt shame for not understanding, for not being stronger, for failing May somehow. The breaking point arrived not with a bang, but with the quiet rustle of old papers and the lingering scent of May's rose potpourri. It was a drizzling Saturday afternoon, months into the probate process. The cottage, now officially listed for sale, needed to be cleared out. Evelyn had volunteered, of course, to help, to make it easier for me. She said she couldn't bear to see it empty and cold. I spent the morning boxing up May's vast collection of poetry, her delicate teacups, the small, quirky souvenirs from her travels. Evelyn was in the study, meticulously going through May's old desk. I was in May's bedroom, carefully wrapping a porcelain figurine that had sat on her dresser for decades. I picked up an old wooden jewelry box, its velvet lining faded, and saw a small, almost invisible seam on the underside. Curiosity, a librarian's instinct for hidden knowledge, prompted me to investigate. I pressed on the seam, and a thin panel slid open, revealing a shallow compartment I'd never known existed. Inside wasn't jewelry, but a worn manila envelope. My heart began to pound a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I pulled out the contents. The first was an old will, dated 5 years prior. handwritten but meticulously signed and witnessed. My name jumped out at me immediately. To my beloved nephew, Liam O'Connell, I bequeath my lakeside cottage situated at, and then the clear, unambiguous statement. The entirety of my financial estate, after all necessary taxes and small bequests to charities, is to be distributed solely to him. There was no mention of any substantial debts, no unforeseen liabilities, nothing that Evelyn or Mr. Finch had claimed. My vision blurred. This wasn't a draft. It was the original, a clear, unequivocal expression of May's intent, the very same intent she'd spoken of. As my fingers trembled, I found another item in the envelope, a printout of an email chain. The names Evelyn and Finch were at the top. Asterisk Evelyn to Finch. So glad we finally have this sorted. Liam's so trusting, bless his heart. He won't question anything if we frame it right. Asterisk asterisk Finch to Evelyn. Indeed. The unforeseen liabilities and complex administrative costs should sufficiently cover our ends. May's original will is problematic. We'll need to work quickly before he gets wise. Asterisk asterisk Evelyn to Finch. And the cottage? Can we really swing selling it out from under him? He loves that place. Asterisk asterisk Finch to Evelyn. We'll devalue it with the repairs narrative. Claim it's unsellable otherwise. And the probate expenses will be so high, it'll seem like a relief to him to get rid of it. He's emotionally vulnerable. Leverage that. Asterisk my blood ran cold. The words swam before my eyes, each one a fresh stab to my gut. Leverage that. They had used my grief, my love for May, my inherent trust against me. They had seen my vulnerability not as a human condition to be respected, but as a weakness to exploit. I stumbled out of the bedroom, the papers clutched in my hand, my breath ragged. Evelyn was still in the study, humming softly as she boxed up May's old tax returns. I could hear the faint sound of the drizzle outside, a stark contrast to the storm raging within me. Evelyn, I said, my voice barely a whisper, thick with something I couldn't quite name, betrayal, rage, profound sorrow. She turned, a serene smile on her face. Yes, darling? Found anything interesting? I held out the papers, my hand shaking so violently the edges ruffled. This. What is this? Her eyes, usually so warm and empathetic, widened almost imperceptibly as they fixated on the documents. The color drained from her face. Her composure, always so impeccable, began to crack. She swallowed hard, her gaze darting from the will to the emails, then to my face, filled with unmasked accusation. Liam, she began, her voice quivering, trying to regain control. It's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like. I laughed, a raw, humorless sound that tore at my throat. It looks exactly like you and Mr. Finch decided to steal from me. From May. From her memory. Her chin began to wobble. Tears welled in her eyes. Real tears this time, though I no longer trusted them. Oh, Liam, please. It's so much more complicated than that. I've been in such a terrible financial bind. Debts. So many debts. She started to sob, covering her face with her hands. Mr. Finch, he suggested it. He said it was the only way. He said it was legal. He said no one would ever know. The words tumbled out of her, a cascade of desperate excuses and self-pity. She blamed Finch, of course, painting herself as a victim, coerced and desperate. The woman I had trusted, the woman May had trusted, was unraveling before me, exposing a grotesque core of greed and deceit. I called Mr. Finch from May's landline, my hands still shaking, my voice dangerously low. I read him the email chain, one by chilling word. There was a long silence on the other end, then a sigh. Mr. O'Connell, he said, his voice as flat and emotionless as ever. I was following the client's instructions and legally covering their tracks. It was all above board, within the confines of what the law allows when interpretations are flexible. I advise you to reconsider any accusations. This will only cause more difficulty and unnecessary legal expenses. Difficulty? Unnecessary legal expenses? My world had just shattered, and he spoke of legal expenses. The audacity, the sheer coldness of it, solidified my resolve. They thought I was naive. They thought I was weak. But they were wrong. After the calls, I sank onto May's old armchair, the one she always read in, and the world collapsed around me. The drizzle outside intensified, mirroring the storm in my soul. Every conversation, Every reassuring word Evelyn had spoken, every complicated explanation from Mr. Finch, now replayed in my mind, twisted and distorted into something venomous. My chest felt hollowed out, a gaping wound where my trust used to be. The memories of May, so precious and pure, were suddenly tainted by the knowledge of her friend's betrayal. It felt like her love, her generosity, had been cheapened, desecrated. The lavender scent in the air now felt cloying, a suffocating reminder of what was lost. I cried then, not just for May, but for the shattering of my innocence, for the cruel lesson in human depravity. My body ached with a profound, bone-deep weariness. For hours, I sat there, paralyzed by the enormity of what had happened, unable to move, unable to think clearly. The betrayal cut deeper than grief itself, because it was a betrayal of May's legacy, not just her life. It was a violation of the sacred bond of trust. But slowly, agonizingly, the tears gave way to something else, a cold, simmering anger, a quiet defiance. They had underestimated me. They had mistaken my grief for stupidity, my trust for naivete. The fog of sorrow and confusion began to lift, replaced by a searing clarity. This wasn't just about money. It was about honor. It was about May, her true wishes, her memory. I would not let them win. I would not let them defile her final act of love towards me. My hands, still trembling, reached for my phone. I didn't know where to start, but I knew I had to start somewhere. I typed in independent estate lawyer Chicago. The screen glowed, illuminating my face, etched with newfound determination. I made the first call, my voice raw but steady. I explained, haltingly at first, then with growing conviction, what I had discovered. The lawyer on the other end listened patiently, his voice calm. He asked me to send over everything I had. As I hung up, a fragile sense of purpose began to solidify within me. It wouldn't be easy. I knew that. But I also knew I couldn't walk away. This was the fight of my life, not for wealth, but for justice, for truth, for May. The months that followed were a blur of legal documents, phone calls, and emotionally draining meetings. My life as a quiet librarian was turned upside down. I spent my evenings poring over spreadsheets, highlighting clauses, compiling evidence. The legal battle was long, tortuous, and incredibly expensive. Every time I thought about giving up, about the sheer exhaustion of it all, I would picture May's kind smile, hear her gentle laughter, and remember the words of her true will. Evelyn, predictably, dug in her heels. She continued to play the victim, her tears now seeming performative, her pleas for understanding ringing hollow. Mr. Finch, ever the cold legalist, maintained his stance that he had acted within the letter of the law. They tried to paint me as greedy, ungrateful, unstable from grief. But I had the evidence, irrefutable and damning. The original will, the emails, they were the bedrock of my case. There were days I thought I would break. The financial strain was immense, the emotional toll even greater. I missed work, my focus shattered. My quiet life was replaced by court dates and depositions. I felt perpetually on edge, my stomach in knots. But with each small victory, with each step closer to revealing the truth, a new strength began to emerge within me. I learned to speak up, to stand firm, to trust my own judgment again. I learned the cold, hard reality that sometimes the people you trust the most can inflict the deepest wounds. Eventually, after nearly a year of relentless fighting, a settlement was reached. It wasn't a complete victory, not in the way I had initially hoped. The cottage, my beloved sanctuary, was irrevocably sold to an innocent third party during the early stages of their manipulation. That loss still aches, a dull throb in my heart. But I did win a significant portion of my rightful inheritance back, far more than the pittance Evelyn and Finch had intended to leave me with. They faced professional consequences, their reputations tarnished, their schemes brought to light. The emotional closure didn't come immediately with the judge's final gavel. It came slowly, in the quiet moments of reflection. I learned that confronting cherished relationships, even when it means tearing them apart, can be the greatest act of love and self-respect. I fought for May, for her clear intentions, for the dignity of her memory. I fought for myself, to reclaim my sense of worth and my belief in justice. My life is different now. I'm still a librarian, still find solace in stories. But I'm also stronger, more discerning, less naive. The wound of betrayal has scarred over, leaving a faint but permanent mark. I understand now that trust, once shattered, can never fully be restored to its original state. But it can be rebuilt, carefully, thoughtfully, with those who prove themselves worthy. I visit the lake sometimes, stand on the public shore, and look across the water to where May's cottage used to be. It's no longer hers, no longer mine, but the memories remain, untainted by the greed that tried to steal them. I carry May's true wishes in my heart, and in fighting for them, I found a resilience I never knew I possessed. It was a painful journey, a devastating betrayal, but it taught me that even in the deepest sorrow, there is strength to be found, and that sometimes, finding your own voice is the most profound healing of all.